Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generally spooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho!
Welcome to Kieran's Impatient and Wants to Hear the Rest of the Story, the podcast.
Yes, this is the Generally Spooky Podcast. I'm Kieran, that's Eilidh. She told me a story. It's Scottish history, it's spooky podcasts. Let's go. I want to know. I need part 2.
We have been talking about Deacon Brodie. Last week I gave you the first half of his thrilling tale. We literally just pressed stop and we're recording again, so there has been no gap, and Kieran is very impatiently waiting for the rest of the story.
It's too long a gap. There's no gap, it's too much.
You didn't even leave the room.
I could have left the room.
You got up, you dealt with how numb your bum was, and now you've sat back down again.
I did do that. I'm in a different chair and I don't feel okay about it.
We're recording in our living room. I am painting our office.
Yep.
So everything is upside down.
Eilidh has displaced me.
I have. But I'm going to give you a nice office to make up for it.
I suppose that's okay.
Nicely decorated and everything. I mean, you did all the taping. I've done all the painting.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty good deal. There's no time for this.
I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. If you haven't listened to it, I would recommend listening to it before this one. Otherwise, it's just that you're going to have missed the background and a good chunk of the story. So this one might not make sense.
Yes.
Live your life. You know, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But if it were me, I would listen to last week's first.
Yep.
And Kieran doesn't have a choice because he's had to listen to the whole thing. So, let's just jump in, shall we?
Well, roll some music and we can start. Let's go.
Last week, I told you all about William Brodie, his early life, his childhood, the circumstances that led to his adult choices, and the string of robberies that he partook in with Smith, Brown, and Ainsley.
Yep.
You remember.
I remember.
Was just like 10 minutes ago. You remember. You were there.
I know what's up.
We left Brodie at the Edinburgh Excise Office.
Yes. He's about to steal he's going to attempt to steal the tax money.
Yes. The excise office was where merchants had to stop before they entered the city of Edinburgh to pay taxes on everything that they intended to sell. So everyone had to do this. It was law.
Yep.
And there was always a lot of money in the excise office.
I have to assume it was also quite well guarded.
Typically, yes.
Since there's lots of money in it.
It was well known that there was money there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm curious what they're going to do. Are they too bold as brass? Are they just like, let's rob it? Oh, we got caught.
Well, it seems like the big thing was that Brodie wanted to rob this place.
Yeah.
Once again, it's less about the money. Even though there's a lot of money on the property, it's the status of robbing where the taxes are. Now, this is in March 1788. It was in this same year that Brodie was elected to serve on a high jury in a court case.
Oh, man. Bet he loved that.
Because remember, while all of these robberies have been happening, there were 5 or 6 by this point, I can't remember.
Yep.
Brodie had been maintaining this sparkling exterior.
Yeah.
Absolutely no one would have suspected him of any wrongdoing.
And I don't even blame people.
No, there's absolutely no indication that he does anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, he's just living this mad double life filled with chaos and illegalness.
So this man, this epitome of good society, wants to rob the excise office.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So before actually carrying it out, he managed to convince the group that this was a good idea. Brodie and Smith both went to the office several times, and their ploy was to ask to see various people who worked there so they could try and get inside and scout out the layout of the building.
Yeah.
So they would ask for particular people and be taken to go see them.
It's quite a lot of planning to have a genuine reason to go and see those specific people. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the premise was for their visits.
Yeah,
I feel like it was someone that Brodie or Smith actually knew who worked there.
Yeah.
But was unaware of the robbery.
Well, because they would need an inside man who didn't know he was an inside man.
Yes. That seems to be what they had. So they got into the office and they knew the layout. And on one of their visits, Smith noticed that the key to the office was just hanging on a nail. Out in the open.
A common occurrence.
Just like John Tapp's key from last week. This was a common thing. The key was just hanging there.
Yeah, I imagine a really good, big, long, rusty thing.
Yes. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be rusty then.
Well, that's true.
It's the type of key that would be rusty now.
Yeah.
But Smith acted very quickly upon seeing this key. He immediately made a cast of the key with putty that he had with him.
Oh, nice.
Without anyone noticing. He did it straight away. And this was how they had made the false keys for the other robberies, I think. I'm fairly certain that's how you make a false key. I tried to look it up, and I'm probably on a list.
Oh, I do remember you saying that, yeah.
But I wanted to check, because I didn't know if this was a new thing, or if it was a standard practice. I tried to check.
I've seen it in movies before.
I'm probably on a list.
They have a little case that looks like a ring case that snaps shut, and then you put the key in it and you snap it shut. And
it's like Play-Doh.
Yeah, and it does a little clay imprint of the key.
Because then you just fill that with metal and you have the key.
Yeah.
And because it's in the case, it makes the cast on both sides.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what he did immediately upon seeing this key.
Yep, and that's where the term castanet comes from.
Brodie, on their visits, figured out exactly where the money was kept in the office. He clocked where the cashier's desk was. So they had the key, and now they knew where the money was.
He couldn't just smell it like a bloodhound.
No. He's not a supernatural being. Mm-hmm. He's just greedy.
Yeah.
So, do you want to hear the plan?
I'm going to guess the plan.
Okay, even better. I love it when you participate. It's so good when you're interested in my interests. That's marriage.
That's marriage right there. That's the podcast. So
watch as we start another podcast just talking about marriage and we get roasted.
No. I don't want to be a part of that.
No, me neither.
You do that with your other mistress. They're going to do it at night time because there's less people around, see? They're going to learn...
less people around, see?
They're going to learn when... Oh, it kind of sounds like that weird radio presenter at the start of the podcast.
Oh, God, he's a weirdo. I don't know why we hired him.
I don't know. They're going to learn the movement of the guards, if there are any, and figure out when they're on their tea break. And then they're just going to walk in and take the money and walk out.
Okay. Bold.
Just in and out. Nobody around. Nobody's going to see him.
I mean, it's a good guess.
They don't seem like they like to overcomplicate things, so...
You've hit on a lot of the key points.
Like, they've got the key. So what else do they need?
Got the key?
Exactly.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Ainsley was the lookout.
Ainsley Harriet.
No.
Okay.
No, this isn't a meme. This is a heist.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Ainsley was the lookout, and he had a whistle that he was supposed to blow if he saw any of the excise office workers coming.
Uh-huh.
One whistle was a warning that people were coming. 3 whistles was if they were really in trouble and they had to leave immediately. So one was just kind of a heads up.
Yep.
But if they heard 3, they had to leave.
Ooh, they're going to get greedy, aren't they? They're going to hear the 3 and they're not going to leave.
If he blew the whistle 3 times, he was supposed to do this and then run to the back of the building and help the rest of them climb out the windows and escape.
Very nice.
That was the plan. The other 3, including Brodie, were supposed to break in and hit the spots that Brodie and Smith had already decided.
Yep.
They figured that they had a window of around a couple of hours because they knew that the night watchman didn't usually arrive until 10 p.m.
Okay, see. Yeah.
And everything was quiet. Everyone left at around 8.
Okay. That's a long working day.
Yes. On the night of the robbery, they arrived at the excise office at about 8 p.m.
Yep.
And this was different to their other robberies for an additional reason that I haven't talked about before.
Okay.
On this night, to rob the excise office, the men were armed.
Okay, this is taking a turn for the worst.
So they'd never had weapons on them before.
No. Why? Are they going to murder people if they get caught?
Well, let me explain.
Okay.
I say they were armed. Ainsley had a big stick. He had a large baton to defend himself with. The other 3 were all armed with pistols, which they hadn't been before. The pistols were loaded, which suggested that none of the men intended on being brought in by authorities if they were caught.
No. Do you think the guy with the stick was raging?
I mean, maybe they just couldn't trust him.
Maybe.
Maybe he would, shoot himself somehow. One of those types.
Maybe.
So you have a wooden gun. It's safer.
Yeah, they meet up like, dude, what's that? Well, it's what? It's my kosh. You know, I'm gonna show it to him. I'm like, why'd you have that? Because we're bringing weapons. What do you have? Pistols. I don't have. When did we get pistols?
I did have a theory about why he didn't have a gun. I have no basis for this in fact.
Yep.
My wonder is that he was the lookout, so he's obviously on the street, visible.
Yep.
I don't know whether he would look suspicious if he had a pistol.
Oh, maybe.
Because you would look at him, well, why do you have that?
Yeah, because it'd be fairly sizable to hide in your undercoat.
So maybe it was to make him blend in more.
Possibly.
Because maybe feasibly with a big stick or something, he could rest that somewhere.
Yeah.
And pretend that it wasn't his.
Or just lean on it.
You know?
Yep.
But maybe a gun would be too conspicuous and people going past would look at him and take notice of him.
Yeah.
Which might be enough to ruin the whole thing.
I assume he also wasn't given a bag with a shilling sign on it.
No. No. He didn't have a robber's mask and a stripy top.
Yep.
The group managed to break into the office. They got inside. They found the cashier's desk again. But while they were going about their raiding of the place, everything went wrong.
Oh no. Oh no.
James Bonar, Bonar, was the Deputy Solicitor of Excise, which was a big deal. He unexpectedly came back to the office at 8:30.
Oh no.
While the robbers were there.
Forgotten his petticoat.
I'm not sure. Not a petticoat. But I'm not sure why. Just looking through my notes, it doesn't say why he came back. Assumedly just because he forgot something or something needed to be done.
Yep.
Fairly innocent, I would have thought.
Forgot his calculator, or his abacus that he likes to take home.
His abacus. Here's what James said happened, in his own words.
Okay.
I recollect having occasion to call at the excise office upon Wednesday, the 5th of March last, about 8:30 in the evening. And as I thought it was probable that there might still be some person in the office, I went straight forward to the door without calling for the key, and finding the door on the latch, I opened it and went in. So he's assuming that someone might still be working.
Yep. You wouldn't instantly go to robber, would you?
No, it seems like it was common for people to work late.
Yeah.
So this wasn't unusual, that the door was already open when he got there.
Yep.
Just as I entered, a man, who appeared to be dressed in a black coat and a cocked hat, stepped out. He seemed to be in a hurry, and I stepped aside to give way to him. He was a square-built man and was rather taller than me. I took no suspicion, thinking it was some of the people belonging to the office, detained later than usual.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, 'cause you wouldn't know everybody who's coming and going.
No.
Particularly at a place like that.
Yeah.
Where you're dealing with so many people. That's not unusual to me.
No, I don't think so.
And he's one of the higher-ups, so maybe he doesn't know everybody who's working there.
He doesn't need to know the little people.
Well, exactly, especially at this time period. I went upstairs to the solicitor's office and into the room in which I usually write. I remained there about 10 minutes, came down again, and then went away. I saw no person either in the entry or the court as I came out.
Oh, dang.
Now, he said all this under oath.
Yep.
So it's as reliable as we're going to get.
Yeah.
Without realising it at the time, James had literally walked into Deacon Brodie.
Oh, my days.
And he had no idea anyone else was in the building.
Oh, that's wild.
Isn't that awful?
You would not feel good about that.
I would feel awful knowing that he was in danger. They could have shot him.
Well, yeah.
And he had no idea.
No idea at all.
It's like those stories you hear of people who are just in their house and they don't know that someone's broken in and living in the attic.
Oh, God.
Where you've been there the whole time and they've been with you the whole time and you have no idea.
It's not good. Blech.
So Ainsley, the lookout, had seen James coming and had used the whistle just as he was told to, but nobody heard him. So they had no idea someone was coming.
Oh, I see.
So Ainsley did, and he did the job he was supposed to, but they didn't hear him.
Oh.
When Brodie realised that someone had disturbed them and someone was in the building, he bailed. He just left without the other two.
Oh, I can't entirely blame him. Just packed up his nopes and got the fuck out of there.
There's no honour in that, though. You're there as a group.
Yeah.
Smith and Brown were still doing their robbing.
Yep.
But when they heard someone rushing through the building, they bailed too. But I think it was Brodie that they heard, not James. Because James had no reason to rush around.
No. Yeah, well, he was just going in as normal.
Mm-hmm. And I assume just walking at a normal pace.
Yep.
He was there for 10 minutes. That suggests that he forgot something or forgot to finish something and then left. But they heard someone rushing around. So I think they heard Brodie leaving.
Yeah, that seems...
And him leaving without them.
Well, him leaving in haste by himself. It's not great.
Mm-mm.
Then what happened?
Well, the robbery was an absolute disaster. Because over the 30 minutes that they were there, they managed to grab about £16. So like we said last time, £7 could be a yearly salary.
Oh, it's not great.
So given the risk, that's not a lot. Because they stole between £300 and £400 from a silk shop.
Well, yeah.
£16.
It's not worth getting out of bed for.
And they stole a few random things just from the office. But this wasn't nearly as lucrative as they hoped, considering the risk they had taken in robbing the place.
Came out with free pens.
Kinda, yeah. That's the vibe I got, that it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
Because I think most, if not all of the robberies before now had been far more successful.
Yep.
With the resale value of the stuff they stole.
Yeah. It's not great.
Mm-mm. And especially with the money that's on offer there.
Yeah.
They got nothing.
They raided the change jar.
Yep.
Well, are they going to have a second and a third attempt as per the corner shop place?
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Mainly because after this, Brodie freaked out.
Oh, shit.
After this robbery that night, he went home and immediately went into full panic mode about being caught. He rapidly changed out of his black clothes that James had seen him wearing into something that was more recognisable as him.
Yeah.
And his sister caught him changing his clothes. That she admitted to that. She saw him doing that evening.
Oh, no.
But he wore things that were recognisable as him. And after that, he made a point of going out in public and he went to go visit one of his mistresses, Jean Watt. Because how could he have been robbing the excise office if he was with her?
Yeah, he arrived panting at about 9 p.m. Is that fine?
Right. Now, this might all have been fine for him. It may have been a good enough alibi.
Yep.
Except Brown went to the authorities after the robbery failed.
Did he get the pardon?
He straight up went and confessed, hoping for that king's pardon.
Ooh.
That I mentioned in the last episode.
I can see them going for it, because arresting Deacon Brodie would be much more scandalous and but a bigger catch, you know?
Well, here's the tricky thing. about that.
Uh-huh.
Brown went to the authorities hoping to protect himself by throwing the others under the bus, because he knew that this had been a disaster. They had been seen. Brodie had bailed.
Yep.
Everything went wrong. So he dogged in Ainsley and Smith, but Brown didn't say anything about Brodie being involved at all.
Oh. Ooh, he's hoping for a bit of money.
He didn't say a word.
Okay.
And Brown's confession led to Ainsley and Smith being arrested that night. So that night of the robbery, the three of them are all in jail.
Oh, dang. Oh, yeah, because he did just confess. So.
Yes.
He was like, okay, thanks, you can go.
So they're at least taking them in so they can be tried. Are you following?
Yep.
The following morning, so Brodie slept on it. I read that Brodie tried to visit the members of the gang who were in prison, but he wasn't allowed to talk to them.
Okay.
They weren't allowed anyone to see them.
Yeah.
And this was still at a time where no one would have suspected he even knew these men.
Yeah, well, it seems odd. Like, oh, can I see these three men? Why? Voyeuristic interest only.
Right?
Yep.
So he's acting irrationally. He's not thinking about it. He's in panic. And I'm assuming he freaked out when he heard they were all arrested.
Well, how long is it going to be before they dog him in?
Exactly. And like you said, Brodie would have been the more lucrative catch.
Yeah.
So he's assuming they're going to give them my name so that they get a more lenient sentence.
Yep.
So he was hoping to get in and talk to them to tell them not to say anything.
Yeah.
And he wasn't able to do that. And they didn't know that Brodie had tried to see them.
Yep.
So as far as they're concerned, Brodie's gone.
He's just fucked off, mate. Well.
It's a technique that the police use, like now sometimes they keep people separate to get their statements.
Oh, yeah.
So that they can't plan what they're going to say. They can't plan what they're going to lie about.
Well, it's a good way to check the story, isn't it?
Yeah, because if they don't match, you know something's not quite right.
Yeah, someone's lying.
So Brodie wanted to clear things up with his accomplices so they wouldn't say anything, and he couldn't do that.
Yeah, probably.
So he had no idea how they were going to act.
Offer them a nice big fat bribe for keeping it chill.
Or a threat.
Or a threat. He has a pistol.
You know?
Yeah.
So a couple of days pass. On the morning of the 9th of March, the robbery had happened on the night of the 5th.
Okay.
Morning of the 9th. Brodie couldn't take it anymore. He was completely tormented these past few days, not knowing what was going to happen or if the police were going to turn up at his door. He woke up early on the 9th and he summoned his foreman, Robert Smith.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who ran his business for him when he wasn't there.
Which, presumably, he wasn't there very often if he's busy planning robberies and going to gambling dens.
Well, you know, he was his right-hand man. He needed him. Brodie asked Robert to bring him some clothes because he told Robert that he was going to be travelling for work for the next few days.
Oh, God.
Now, this wasn't that unusual.
Nope.
This wouldn't have set alarm bells going for Robert, really, because Brodie had to do this a lot because he would inspect his suppliers who provided the materials for what he built. So springtime, which it would have been the 9th of March-ish, that was a common time where he would go and inspect timber.
Yep.
So he did that every year. This wasn't strange.
Fair play.
So Robert disappeared and he went and got the clothes as he was asked to do.
Yep.
He returned. And then Brodie did the super casual thing and asked Robert if he had any news about the people who had carried out the excise office robbery. So news had spread by this point that they had tried to do this. Everyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
But this raised some red flags for Robert.
I don't imagine he said it in a very conversational tone.
Not with the mood he must have been in at this point if he's just bailing.
Yeah, it sounds like he would have been quite frantic.
Yeah, or trying to keep it cool.
Yeah.
Robert answered, and he told Brodie that Brown had been taken back to England. Because if you remember...
Oh, yeah.
Brown was on the run, avoiding being transported for a different crime.
Well... Yes, we will absolutely pardon you for this crime. Oh, thank God. But, you know, we're arresting you for this other crime. Bye.
Not even that he had already been convicted.
Or just
he was on the run.
Yeah, keeping you in custody for this other crime.
Mm-hmm. And the other men were still in custody.
Well, it's not going to go well from here for anybody, is it?
No. Where are we? Robert followed up this news by saying he really hoped that Brodie wasn't asking about these men because he was worried about them, since they seemed like bad people.
Yes.
Subtly hinting that he really hoped Brodie had nothing to do with any of it. Because otherwise, why would you be asking?
No, and it's his livelihood as well, if Deacon Brodie's reputation goes up in flames.
Well, that, or they might think he was involved.
Or that as well. Didn't even think of that.
Covering up for him.
You know that gift you gave me of those 3 crates of tea? Where did you get all that tea from?
I mean, even something more innocent. Like, oh, why were you working for him so often? Did you know where he was? You must have done.
Yeah.
You know?
These belt buckles were a gift.
So it's bad for him if Brodie knows anything about it.
Absolutely.
But Brodie soldiered on. He brushed Robert off. And he knew the jig was up because Robert kind of knew what was going on. He'd kind of guessed that he must be involved.
Yeah.
So Brodie decided that he had to leave the country.
Yep. That's probably his best plan, really.
Otherwise, he's going to be caught.
Yeah, but where to? To England? To Ireland? All the way to America? Yeah, we're going to be going to America.
Lots of options.
Or into Europe, perhaps.
An interesting point that I saw raised in my research was that he had all of this success and all of this wealth.
Yes.
When it came to having to leave last minute and go on the run, Brodie didn't have anything together that would allow him to leave quickly.
Oh, I see. Doesn't have his bug out bag.
No, and he didn't have a lot of readily available cash.
That does make sense because he seems to have gambled all of his cash.
Yes, but also it suggests that he didn't think he was going to get caught.
Ah, yes.
He had no plan.
No.
In place for if anyone caught on to anything.
That makes sense to me, given his, cavalier attitude up to now.
It does, but it seems like lunacy.
Yeah. I think everything about him seems lunacy.
Yeah. But it seems like he genuinely never thought he would be caught.
Yeah.
He didn't have a lot to hand that would make an escape quick. He tried going to his cousin for help, to say he needs to leave. Can you give me a loan? I have to go.
Yep.
His cousin refused to give him any money. The only thing that he gave him was a change of clothes. So here you go, have that. I'm not giving you anything.
How about you get fucked, mate? Don't blame him for that one.
Right?
Yeah. It's going to be a hard pass for me. This, as you frantically leave, I'm not going to give you my money when I know how wealthy you are. Presumably, he's not nearly as wealthy.
Yes, and why are you so desperate to leave?
Yeah, not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Mm-mm. Brodie left Edinburgh on the 9th of March, like I said, and he arrived in London on the 12th. No planes, remember?
Yep.
So it takes a while to get places. He arrived on the 12th. Here's part of a letter that Brodie wrote to Michael Henderson, who was the owner of the tavern that he used to go to all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael Henderson profited from the goods the group stole. They gave him or sold him some of the stolen goods, which he then sold on for profit.
Yeah. That'll help you turn a blind eye, won't it?
Mm-hmm. So here's what Brodie wrote to Michael Henderson. Arrived in London Wednesday the 12th, where I remained snug and safe in the house of an old female friend until Sunday 23rd of March, whose care for me I shall never forget, and only wish I may ever have it in my power to reward her sufficiently. Within 500 yards of Bow Street, excepting the scar under my eye, I think you could not have rapped me. So, we don't find out the name of the woman that he hangs out with. Uh-huh. So, we don't know if it's a friend, an accomplice that he met through the rest of the group, another mistress even.
Maybe.
We don't know. And he talks about disguising himself, that it's just the scar under his eye. That's the only thing that would suggest that it was him.
Yeah.
But did you notice he mentioned Bow Street?
Yes.
Within 500 yards of Bow Street. This is like the biggest kind of humble brag in this letter. Because if you listen to this is a different source. His female acquaintances' digs couldn't have been in a worse location. The 500 yards of Bow Street is a reference to the Bow Street Magistrates' Office, and more especially the home of the Bow Street Runners, a precursor to London's Metropolitan Police Department.
Oh.
The Bow Street Runners were the first formalised and magistrate-funded police force in London. In leaving his lady friend's residence and altering his appearance, Brodie was intimating he had outsmarted the legendary Bow Street Runners.
Oh, what a dick.
So he's bragging.
Yeah. God. Do you think he got the scar under his eye by walking into a cabinet he made?
God, I hope so. Maybe it was Ainsley's big stick. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
He's on the run. He's completely bailed and panicked, but now he's like bragging about outsmarting the police. Or what was there before the police.
Well, I like that he's left for 3 days being like, nailed it, never going to catch me. I'm once again invincible. Haha, stupid idiots.
It reads like big ego.
Oh, yeah. Very, very big ego.
Especially just very subtly dropping it in.
I know.
Even writing it down.
Well, why would you give any kind of hint about where you are? Or what you look like? Oh, don't forget I've got a scar under my eye. I'm like, oh, well.
Hubris.
Yes.
Big hubris.
Very big.
Everywhere. When Brodie reached London on the 12th, that was when Ainsley and Smith heard that their teammate had fled Edinburgh.
Well, I mean, maybe they were keeping it stoom. Maybe they were keeping quiet, being like, oh, well, he's still on the outside. He'll, like, look out for us and make sure, like, we're okay and stuff. Oh, he's bailed. Oh, has he? Mm-hmm.
They're rotting in a jail cell, and they've heard that Brodie has just completely bailed on them and escaped the city.
I know it's the thing that there's no honour amongst thieves, but it's not a lot of honour.
It wouldn't have gone down well at all.
Yeah.
And I think Brodie was very much hoping that they wouldn't hear that he had left.
Yes.
But also doesn't make sense why he would tell Michael Henderson where he was, because he knew all of them.
I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking.
He's not a very good criminal.
No.
Not really. He has this legendary status as this great burglar, but really, he's not.
He's an idiot. Well, I mean, they must catch him, but I wonder if he goes back. Does he stay away for like a year and be like, yeah, I'm fine now. I'll just go home again and just resume. And then he does, and they're like, well, no, we're still going to arrest you, you moron.
Well, I read conflicting information about whether or not Brown was gone by this point. Some reports said he was still in jail with the rest of them.
Yep.
But some said that he had been taken down to England by this point, like I already said. But Smith confessed first, assumedly hoping he would get a king's pardon.
Yeah.
And the authorities believed Smith. They felt that he couldn't have been lying.
Okay.
Because this was when he outed Brodie.
Yeah.
And I read a good point in my research that Brodie fleeing actually strengthened Smith's claim that he was involved.
Yeah.
Because he was so well known and respected, initially the authorities might not have believed that these common criminals would have anything to do with Deacon Brodie. This is ridiculous. They're just trying to lever some of the blame off them.
Yeah.
But then they found out that Brodie had fled.
Yep.
And no one knew where he was. That's pretty damning.
That is pretty damning. Because I feel character reference would have been very important in the court system in like 1700s.
Yeah.
Because they didn't properly deal with like evidence and stuff like that.
Well, some cases might never have been brought to court if someone was high enough status.
Exactly.
But no, that's ridiculous. Or you'd have the money to make sure it didn't make it to court.
Yeah. So I feel if he'd had the gall to just stand firm, be like, wasn't me? I don't know these men. He could have got away with it.
I think so, because there was nothing to tie him to any of it.
No.
But it's interesting that was one of the nails in the coffin. Because I read one theory that the reason the men didn't initially blame Brodie when they confessed was because they knew no one would believe them.
Well, yeah.
Who would believe that?
Because they probably read about him like in the paper and stuff. They're like, is this the same guy?
Well, they probably knew who he was.
Well, That will play well for their confession that he's bailed.
Well, yes. Yeah, it all looks very damning for him. An innocent man doesn't run.
Yep.
On the 12th, a bounty was released by the Sheriff Clerk's office for William Brodie's capture. This was public, and it shocked the entire city.
It would have.
People could not believe that after reading about all these robberies for so long, and then reading this announcement that Brodie, Deacon Brodie, was involved, it was staggering.
It would be madness.
Absolutely staggering.
To behold.
And now the jig was up because everyone knew, and Brodie is now officially a wanted man.
Yeah.
Because he had just managed to leave before.
Well, no, this can't possibly be true. I'll try and talk to him myself. Oh, he bailed 2 days ago. Well,
in a hurry.
Yeah. Last minute with none of his things. Oh, has anybody heard from him? Oh, this one guy heard from him saying he lives near the police in a disguise.
Well, I don't know when that letter came out.
Oh, well, that's true.
To be clear, I don't know when that came to light. It was included in the court documents.
Yeah.
But I can't tell exactly. I don't know if maybe when Smith was talking about the plot, they questioned and searched Henderson.
Oh, yeah.
And the tavern, since he had some of the goods and things.
Yep.
I don't know. So, at this point, what does Deacon Brodie do, Kieran? What did the great mastermind do next?
Well, if he had a bit of sense, which he doesn't, he would go on to France.
Okay.
I think. Just keep heading off. Disappear. Move to Italy and start a new life. I think he goes back.
You think?
I think he goes back to Edinburgh.
Well, Brodie managed to get passage on a ship that was leaving London for the Netherlands. Now, from what I've read, I think the ship had to stop in Edinburgh before going to the Netherlands.
Yep.
Which was a risky move. But he boarded under the name John Dixon. So, too smart to fail.
Obviously.
This plan can't go wrong.
Who's going to recognise him on this boat to Edinburgh? Nobody, right?
Of course, this didn't work.
What are the odds?
But it's not even the plan itself that is the reason the plan didn't work.
Okay.
Brodie had written a series of letters that he gave to a guy called Mr. Geddes, asking him to pass them along to one of his mistresses in Edinburgh.
Yes.
When they reached Edinburgh.
Uh-huh.
So he outed himself.
Yeah.
Because Geddes was suspicious. He was fairly sure Brodie was wanted.
Yep.
He knew what happened. He knew who he was looking for. So when they got to Edinburgh, he took the letters, like he said he would, and gave them straight to the authorities.
Yep.
And said, I think this is the guy you're looking for. He's on a ship to the Netherlands.
Oh, you just, you know. Mm-hmm. He could have just paid for postage and posted them. Then it would have been fine.
Yeah, or like not said where he was.
Yeah.
It's very stupid.
I'm so sorry, my love. I'm on this boat to the Netherlands. It leaves at 2 p.m.
Here's my forwarding address. Oh. The authorities didn't catch up to him while the ship was still in Edinburgh. So Brodie did make it to the Netherlands.
Oh, well.
And when he got there, he made plans to escape indefinitely. Because he planned to go to New York.
Oh, very nice.
That was his plan.
They do need cabinets in New York, so...
And I'm pretty sure he booked passage, and there are letters that were discovered.
Yep.
That he had written to people in New York who he knew through people.
Yeah.
And had made arrangements to meet with them, and they would help get him set up. Not knowing that he was wanted. I'm pretty sure he was using an alias in these letters. He was going by John Dixon.
And I suppose once he gets to America, there's nothing they can do.
Well, how are they going to find him?
Well, even if they did find, who would find him, and then who would bring him back for justice?
Yeah, they would never find him.
There's not going to be a cross-continental bounty hunter looking for him, is there?
It's nowhere near as big at this point to the New York that we know.
No,
but they're never going to find him.
No.
So this was his plan, and there was proof that he planned to do this.
Yep.
But apparently, a king's messenger travelled to the Netherlands after Brodie and found him in Amsterdam on the 26th of June.
Well.
And he found him hiding in a cupboard.
The great Deacon Brodie hiding in a cabinet. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming there were enough clues in the letters that they were able to figure out where he was. Or when they reached Amsterdam, they knew to ask for John Dixon because they had his alias.
Oh, well, yeah. That answered my question of who would go to Amsterdam to find him. Or just a guy. Can you go to Amsterdam and look for this guy? Yeah. Oh, there he is.
Well, I think that was it. He's delivering the king's justice.
Yep.
And that's why he went. But I think he had already been following him.
Uh-huh.
So he knew that he had been in London and he tried to get down to London after him.
Ooh, he's like a PI.
Kind of, yeah. Like he had been following him and then caught wind of where he was going to be in Edinburgh.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he just found him. He went to where he said he was hiding and found him there.
Well, he's not played it very cool, has he?
No, he's not. He's not. Brodie was taken back to Edinburgh and imprisoned in the toll booth, just like Ainsley and Smith.
Yep.
So
okay, guys.
They're all in the same place now. And Ainsley was convinced in the end to turn King's evidence to protect himself.
Yes.
Which left Brodie and Smith in a very tricky situation.
Well, they have nothing left to give.
No, they are up shit creek without a paddle. And Smith's already confessed.
Yeah.
He's given a full confession about everything that happened, implicating himself.
Yep.
He has confessed to this crime.
I wonder what the motive was for giving the other guy the King's evidence over Smith.
I imagine it would have been easier to convict Brodie and Smith.
Yeah.
Well, they seemed like they did more and were behind more.
That makes sense.
So it would be easier to get convictions for them. Ainsley's connection might have been a bit wishy-washy.
Oh, okay.
I imagine.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So, Brodie and Smith's trial started on the 27th of August, 1788.
It's quite a bit later.
So a couple months.
Yeah.
A couple months after he was captured. And the trial was quite the spectacle.
It would be.
Because people couldn't believe what they were seeing. Deacon Brodie on trial for multiple robberies in high court in front of a jury.
It would beg belief.
Well, this is where the dual personality narrative came into play, because people couldn't believe it.
Well, I imagine it'd even be hard for the jury. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if, even all the way back then, the newspapers played a big part.
They were reporting on it.
As they're reporting the story of this devil, almost, of this horrible man who did all these robberies, and it turns out he has a gambling addiction and mistresses. And
well, I have a bit to say about that later, about how people viewed Deacon Brodie and what he had done.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to talk about that.
Okay.
The trial was also important because there was a lot at stake. If Brodie and Smith were found guilty, then they would be hanged.
Well,
remember, this is the late 1700s.
Yep.
So lots of things are capital offences.
Yep, if you do a crime, you're probably going to die.
Mm-hmm. Now, I read the account of the trial by a man called William Roughhead, and it was hugely helpful. It was a book. It was a book that was published after the fact. So it was published after the trial. But Roughhead used the actual court documents to inform the book. So it's as close as I could get to the actual information. It was super interesting. A really interesting read. It took me a long time. Very small text. But I picked out some of the best things from it for you to paint a picture of what the trial was like.
Oh, yes.
I hope that's okay.
Hit me.
There were lots of surprises, for Brodie in particular. I imagine at this point he may still have thought they don't have anything.
Yeah.
But many of these surprises effectively sealed his fate, and he had no control. Brodie's mistress, Jean Watt, was called as a witness. Now, if you'll remember, Brodie had gone to her home on the night of the excise office robbery to try and create an alibi.
Yes, and she was the one he wasn't very good to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jean was asked to come to court and confirm Brodie's story. So here's what she said. I am well acquainted with the prisoner William Brodie. I remember that on Wednesday, the 5th of March last, Mr. Brodie came to my house just at the time the 8 o'clock bell was ringing, and he remained in it all night, and was not out from the time he came in until a little before 9 o'clock next morning. We went early to bed, about 10 o'clock, as Mr. Brodie complained that night of being much indisposed with a sore throat. Pretty compelling.
Yep.
Right? You might believe her. Until you read one of the letters that Brodie wrote while he was on the run.
Okay.
Which the prosecution had access to.
Yep.
They could read all of these letters. Because their relationship was not as good as she was painting it out to be.
Yeah.
Brodie had asked in his letters how his mistresses and his children were doing. And here's what he said. Pray write me what has become of Anne Grant and how her children disposed of. And how is her children disposed of? Cecil is a sensible, clever girl, considering the little opportunity she has had of improving. My dear little Willie will be, if I can judge, a brave and hardy boy. Jean is her mother's picture and too young to form any opinion of. So that's first mistress and 3 children.
Yep.
What has become of Jean Watt? She is a devil and a whore. I can form no opinion of Frank or his young brother, but pray write me how they are disposed of.
Well...
So he wrote that after he had asked her to cover for him. That's how he spoke about her behind her back. And that's how he spoke about their children.
What an asshole.
So she's trying to paint that, he came to visit and it was nice, but they had evidence that that's not the relationship at all.
Yep.
And obviously he's going to take advantage of her. He's kind of using her.
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, what an asshole.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that awful?
That is awful. That is totally awful.
To talk about his 2 mistresses in the same letter and still treat one of them that way.
Yeah. Ooh.
In the letters, Brodie had also tried to convince the people he knew that he had nothing to do with the crimes. So he was trying to build this idea.
Yeah.
Preemptively. Not expecting the letters to be found. These were a total surprise to him. But he's still trying to convince the people in his life and save face.
I mean, they're like, ooh, you have those? Those are personal. You shouldn't be reading those.
He blamed everything entirely on the rest of the gang who were in prison.
Yeah.
And in the letters, he kind of does this dance between, like, they're entirely to blame. I have nothing to do with it. But I hope for the sake of their souls that they repent and do better. I care about their welfare, but I have nothing to do with that. I'm a great person because I hope they do better.
Yeah.
But that wasn't me.
That wasn't me.
He called them devils while also hoping that they were repenting.
Well, that's a strange one. I thought it was going to be that he called them devils, but then was going to be like, oh, they're such geniuses, though, to pull off that kind of robbery.
Oh, no. He said, and I quote, I absolutely abhor everything these ne'er-do-wells have done, but I still care about their immortal souls.
Well, that's nice of you.
I'm such a good person that I care about these terrible criminals, but what they did was awful.
What they did was so bad. Interesting.
So here's another part of one of the letters that he wrote. I beg you will write me or dictate a letter to Tom, and let it be a very long one, giving me an account of what is likely to become of poor Ainsley Smith and his wife. I hope that neither you nor any of your connections has been innocently involved by those unfortunate men, or by that designing villain Brown. I make no doubt, but he is now in high favour with Mr. Coburn, for I can see some strokes of his pencil in my portrait. May God forgive him of all his crimes and falsehoods. I hope in a short time to be in Edinburgh, and confute personally many false aspersions made against me by him and others.
I mean, it's all well and good to be like, oh no, like, it's all well and good to be like, yeah, they're total liars. Like, don't worry, I'm coming home soon and I'll put all this right, just once everything's blown over.
And once they've been convicted.
Once they've been convicted and it's all put to bed, then I'll come home.
And they can't argue with me.
Yep.
Because they'll be dead.
Yeah. Hard to argue with your neck stretched.
It's so conniving.
Yep.
Oh, I hope the best for them. I really do.
Ugh.
Whoa, it's just icky.
Yeah.
Later in the letters, Brodie actually came off as like pretty thirsty.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because he was desperate to know what people were saying about him.
Oh.
He wanted to know what people were talking about and how they saw him.
Well, if you're that high up in various guilds and high society, your status is everything, isn't it?
And he was also really wanted to know who was worrying about him the most. because he had gone. Yeah. He wanted to know who cared about him the most and like everything that was happening to him. Oh. He even took time in a letter to roast the cousin who refused to help him. Even though he was a criminal.
That bastard wouldn't even help me.
Yeah, he basically just, in the letter, he just calls him like really tight and like he can't even help himself. He's just really annoying.
Oh, God. That never comes across well.
When the cousin was just like, no, you're obviously doing something really wrong here.
Yep, clearly.
Like, it was really just cringe.
Oh, that is cringe.
To read, it was super cringe.
Oh, no.
And who asks about me the most and who seems to care for my well-being the most out of everyone we know?
Oh, man, is anyone worried about me? That'd be like so funny and random if people were worried about me.
Yeah.
Oh.
And all of it came out in court.
Well, his face will have gone red.
Mm-hmm. The letters, like I said, also proved that Brodie intended to travel to America, which was used to confirm his guilt.
Yes.
And he never confirmed whether or not the letters were written by him. Like, he refused to say that he had written them.
Uh-huh.
But it was pretty obvious.
Well, it's someone asking about his mistress's children, family.
Oh, no, I mean the letters about going to America.
Oh, I see.
Because they were signed with his alias.
I got you.
The other ones, I'm pretty sure he signed with his name. But on the back of one of these letters to America and relating to America, he wrote, "Let my name and destination be a profound secret for fear of bad consequences." So it's obviously him.
Obviously him. Do you think they found him because on the back of these letters he just wrote his return address?
Well, he left information in these letters for people to reach him in America. So he was telling people where he was going to be, what his alias was going to be, and who he was going to be staying with.
This guy's a moron.
Yeah.
Or he's lost
not
it.
Smart.
No.
He's just panicking.
Yeah.
He's in the pain cave.
Yep. He's stressed out his box and his brain is no longer a brain.
Yeah.
It's actually a can of mushy peas at this point.
So his trial is not going the way he hoped, because he had Jean Watt come out and she was not treated with respect.
No.
Her testimony was not believed based on the way that he treated her.
Yes.
All of these letters had all of this damning information written with his own hand.
Uh-huh.
And then there was George Smith's testimony.
Oh, okay.
His accomplice.
Yes.
Pretty damning because he had confessed everything.
Yep.
And Smith went so far that he wrote a statement that detailed every single heist that they had intended to carry out.
Oh, shit.
But hadn't been able to.
Oh, shit.
Which didn't look good because it meant they were never going to stop.
No.
They weren't remorseful. They were going to keep going unless they were caught.
Yeah.
Apparently, if all of the heists had gone without a hitch that they had intended, the gang would have gone on to steal goods equal to about £7,500.
Damn.
Which was an inconceivable amount of money.
Yep.
During this time.
Yep.
I'm not going to do the maths, but it's a lot.
Well, if it's 1,000 times an annual wage, that's like £25 million.
Inconceivable.
Yeah. That's a lot.
So he's saying, yeah, we were going to do that.
Yeah. Ooh, well, I can see this being quite a short trial all in.
Yeah. It lasted about 21 hours in total. Although I will say it was considered a bit dicey that the testimony of other criminals was allowed in court. That was a whole issue that had to be debated as to whether their testimony was admissible because they weren't trustworthy.
Oh, that's true.
Because they were also criminals.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
That was a whole thing, but I won't get into the details of that. Yeah, the trial lasted 21 hours and the jury went away after that and returned with a verdict.
Yes.
Now, I have the whole verdict here for you. I have the account of the verdict being read that I would like to read to you. It's pretty long, but it's very descriptive. And when I was reading it, it really put me there.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's okay. I'd like to listen to that.
Okay. The court being again met and the prisoners brought to the bar, the clerk of court called over the list of the jury, and all being present, the Lord Justice Clerk asked them who was their chancellor, upon which the chancellor rose and delivered their verdict to his lordship, sealed with black wax. The verdict being opened and read by the judges severally, they appointed it to be recorded. During this pause, a deep silence prevailed. The verdict being recorded, the Lord Justice Clerk called upon the prisoners to attend to it, and it was then read aloud by the clerk of court as follows. They all, in one voice, find the panels William Brodie and George Smith guilty of the crime charged against them in the said indictment. The Lord Justice Clerk then addressed the prisoners as follows. William Brodie and George Smith, it belongs to my office to pronounce the sentence of the law against you. You have had a long and fair trial, conducted on the part of the public prosecutor with the utmost candour and humanity, and you have been assisted with able counsel who have exerted the greatest ability and fidelity in your defence. I wish I could be of any use to you in your melancholy situation. To one of you, it is altogether needless for me to offer any advice. You, William Brodie, from your education and habits of life, cannot but know everything suited to your present situation, which I could suggest to you. It is much to be lamented that those vices, which are called gentlemanly vices, are so favourably looked upon in the present age. They have been the source of your ruin, and whatever may be thought of them, they are such as assuredly led to ruin. I hope you will improve the short time which you have now to live by, reflecting upon your past conduct, and endeavouring to procure, by a sincere repentance, forgiveness for your many crimes. God always listens to those who seek him with sincerity. His lordship then pronounced sentence of death in the usual form, and the sentence having been recorded and signed by the judges, it was read aloud as follows. The said William Brodie and George Smith to be carried from the bar back to the Tolbooth of Edinburgh, therein to be detained until Wednesday, the 1st day of October next, and upon that day to be taken forth of the said Tolbooth to the place fixed upon by the magistrates of Edinburgh, as a common place of execution, and then and there, betwixt the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock afternoon, to be hanged by the necks by the hands of the common executioner upon a gibbet until they be dead, and ordain all their movable goods and gear to be inbrought to his majesty's use, which is pronounced for doom. The sentence having been read, Mr. Brodie discovered some inclination to address himself to the court, but was restrained by his counsel. He thereupon respectfully bowed to the bench, and the panels were removed to prison.
Oh shit.
What do you think?
I can't believe all his belongings are going to go to the crown. Presumably that's his business and his properties and everything.
I think so. We will talk about it in a bit, but it's not good.
It's not good. I like to basically, one of you should know better, Deacon.
Oh, that was it. It was worse than that. Is that there's no point in me even saying anything to you, because you know.
You know. You're smart enough to know.
And I hope you use the short time you have left to do better.
Oh, that's quite something.
It gave me shivers when I read it the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just imagine being there and hearing that and just, oh.
I know.
So if you zoned out while I read that, I don't blame you. Brodie and Smith were both found guilty and sentenced to death.
That's the key takeaway.
Yes. If you didn't want to listen to that, I don't blame you.
The too long didn't read.
I don't blame you. You can imagine that following this verdict, they must have both been feeling pretty crummy.
Well, yes.
Because they were just sitting in the Tolbooth prison. And from the cells in the prison,
yep,
it was pretty common knowledge that if you were there, you could hear the gallows being built.
Ooh.
They were close enough that the sound travelled.
Yep.
So you were sitting sentenced to death and you could hear them building it.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
I kind of thought there was just always a gallows there.
Nope.
I assume people were getting hung left, right and centre.
They built them or they moved them from different places.
That makes sense.
They moved them around.
Would be a bit morbid just to leave it there all the time, I suppose.
Yeah. Or it might just be vandalised.
Oh, that as well.
If people didn't want to be hung, they could just destroy the gallows.
Yeah. Or people could, hang people they didn't like on them.
Yeah, I can see why it wasn't there all the time.
Yeah.
There was a wait of about a month between when they were sentenced and when they were hanged.
Yes.
which is rough. Mm-hmm. By all accounts, Brodie kept his cool for the duration of the time he was in prison.
What else could you do?
He maintained pretty good humour. He didn't collapse under his emotions or anything. He stayed pretty strong.
Strange.
I don't know if maybe it's too much to take, so maybe. You don't feel anything.
Yeah.
But he only ever admitted to the robbery of the excise office.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. He said, yep, I did that. That was me. But I wasn't involved in any of the other robberies. Because he had only been convicted on the excise office robbery.
Ah. Oh, but that was enough to have him hanged.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's strange.
But he never confessed to any of the others. Smith did.
Yeah.
But he never did.
Interesting.
According to the account of the trial, this is how Brodie felt. He declared that, notwithstanding the censures and opinion of the world, he was innocent of every crime excepting that for which he was condemned, and endeavoured to extenuate his guilt by saying that the crime for which he suffered was not a depredation committed on an individual, but on the public, who could not be impressed by the small trifle the excise was robbed of. The hopes of obtaining a pardon or an alteration of his sentence to transportation seemed strongly to have impressed his mind.
Yeah.
So it's not like I robbed an institution. I didn't rob a person. No one was harmed.
And it was only £16.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like he was playing down the act so that he wouldn't be hanged.
Well, yeah. You've got to have something to hope for, don't you?
Yeah, but no real accountability happening here.
No.
Because he's saying he did it, but there's a lot of conditions attached.
I did it, yeah, but...
Yeah. I'm sorry, but... Then it's not an apology.
No.
But this was in contrast to Smith, because he confessed to everything.
Yes.
And accepted his fate. He didn't try to talk anyone down. But then there's a chance that he laid all the blame for the other robberies at Brodie's door, and maybe he wasn't involved.
Maybe.
Seems unlikely, but...
Yeah.
You know. Both the men had visits from ministers to attend to their immortal souls while they were in prison, which was pretty standard. Brodie was allowed visits from his friends and family while he was in prison, up until the night before his execution. And the day before he was executed, he was actually visited by his eldest daughter, Cecil.
Oh, wow.
Who was only 10.
Oh, no. That's a lot.
But they got to be together for the last time.
Well, that's nice.
Brodie and Smith were initially in the same cell as two men who robbed a bank in Dundee, who were also sentenced to death. But a few days before Brodie and Smith's execution, the other men were given an additional 6 weeks before their own.
Ooh. That's just salt in the wound, isn't it? Oh. Well, that's tough to take.
We're now at the night before the execution. Only clergymen were allowed to visit Brodie and Smith that night. I think Cecil had seen her dad during the day. And measures were taken that night to make sure that neither of the men committed suicide during the night.
Yep.
Brodie claimed that even if, quote, poison was placed on one hand and a dagger at the other, he would refuse them both and not launch into eternity with the horrid crime of self-murder. He would submit to the sentence of the laws of his country and would wait his fate with calmness and composure, unquote.
Fair enough.
If you're unfamiliar, some people believe for religious reasons that taking your own life is a sin.
Yeah.
It's silly. I do not agree. But that was the belief at the time.
Yep. Well, it makes sense that if he spent this past month waiting and almost expecting to get his sentence reduced, then he's like, oh, well, God will understand, though. God will give me a pass and let me into heaven, That, or just he didn't want to die. Well, that as well.
Or maybe he thought he was going to get a last-minute reprieve.
Yeah.
Brodie managed to sleep through the night before his execution, up until 8 a.m.
Damn.
Right?
I've
had some blood tests recently, and I'm scared of needles. And for the first couple, I barely slept.
Nope.
I just freaked me out. I couldn't sleep. I was terrified. So the fact that he slept until 8 a.m. is astounding to me.
Yeah.
Which is another point in the column for... He didn't think this was actually going to happen.
No. Just pure denial all the way through.
Yep.
Well, it got him through, so...
Yes.
Who's to blame?
Yeah. By 9 a.m, the men were both ready to leave their cells. They were attended by the minister again, and Brodie was visited by some people to say his last goodbyes.
See ya.
Now, we're going to get chatting about the execution itself here. If that's a problem for you, skip ahead. Just as a heads up. It's not gory, but it's unpleasant.
If you don't want to hang around.
Yes, if you don't want that, this is your warning, because it's not nice. But there was a lot of records kept of the day, so we're going to talk about them.
Big deal. So,
at 1 in the afternoon, both of them in chains, Brodie and Smith ate a last meal, and they had beef steak and port wine. If you're interested, there's a whole book that was published about the last meals of death row prisoners.
Oh yeah,
some people are super into knowing what they had. That's what these men had. At 2 p.m, the magistrates were ready, so they had to be present to witness the execution, because this is justice.
Yep.
Brodie made Smith go first,
giving himself some extra time.
Brodie bowed when he got up onto the scaffold, following Smith up the steps. But then that was when he fully understood the scale of what his execution had become, because there were 40,000 people gathered to watch him hang.
That's a lot.
And apparently at the sight of all these people, he uttered, "This is awful."
Yeah.
40,000 people.
Oh.
I'm sure I saw an illustration of what it looked like with that many people in the centre of Edinburgh, because he's been hanged near St Giles Cathedral.
Well, see, if he charged them all £1 each, he would have made more than he would in the robberies. So there you go.
God. Oh. The two men prayed with the minister up on the scaffold, and when the executioner tried to tie Brodie's hands, which was standard, Brodie asked the man if he wouldn't, promising that he wasn't going to struggle.
Okay.
When it came to the last moments before the drop, Brodie again insisted that Smith had to go first.
Oh, why?
I don't know. I don't know if it was fear or some kind of revenge for doing him in. I really don't know.
I don't know.
What happened next was pretty awful. So if you want to skip. Smith was standing there with the noose around his neck, ready for it to happen. And it was discovered that Brodie's rope was the wrong length.
Oh no.
So it had to be adjusted. But they just left Smith standing there, waiting.
Oh God. That's awful.
They adjusted Brodie's rope. He stepped up to the same platform that Smith was on, and the rope still wasn't right. So they had to take him down and adjust it again, with Smith still standing there.
Oh God.
Now, apparently Brodie got impatient at this point, and he was claiming that the executioner should be punished for incompetence.
That I don't blame him for, because that would be awful. Okay, you ready? Oh, not yet. Okay. Oh, not yet. Oh.
Mm-hmm. So once that was all sorted, Brodie and Smith shook hands. Brodie buttoned up his waistcoat and his coat, and just before 3 p.m, the two men were hanged.
Oh.
Now, the account, like the whole trial account, gives a pretty detailed account of the execution, which I am going to spare you.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
It was quite upsetting.
Yes.
So I'm not doing that. It was a hanging. I'm not sure about Smith, but Brodie was apparently buried in an unmarked grave, which was common if you were executed, behind Buccleuch Church, which is now a car park. I don't know if I'm saying that right either, but apparently that's where he was buried. But rumours spread pretty quickly after the execution. There was lots of gossip after Brodie's execution.
Yep.
The first was that Brodie had actually designed the scaffold that he was hanged from.
Yes.
And was the first person to be hanged from it.
Oh, no.
So this was one of the rumours that went mad after the event. This doesn't seem to be true.
Well, that's good, I think.
The closest to the truth I saw was that Brodie was on the council that likely approved the funding to have the scaffold designed or built.
Well, that's more tenuous.
He had that kind of power and authority.
Yeah.
So it seems like he would have had to vote and approve that funding, which led to that being built.
Yeah.
Which he was then hanged from.
Oh, man. What a waste.
That seems to be the link.
Yes. It's not as poetic, is it?
No, but I think the rumour gained traction because he was a right.
Yeah.
So he could have built it.
It's the kind of thing that could have been true.
Yes.
But isn't.
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
The second rumour that went around for a long time is that Deacon Brodie wasn't actually executed that day.
Oh. I mean, it seems like it was him.
The story goes that Brodie managed to smuggle a steel collar and a silver tube into the prison.
Yep.
And had them on when the time for execution came.
Okay.
And people claimed that he also previously arranged to have the executioner ignore the collar and then have his body cut down quickly so that he wouldn't die.
Ah. Well, I don't see that being true.
No, some people reported seeing him in Paris after he was supposed to have died. But there doesn't seem to be any truth to these claims.
Yeah. It's funny that's a long-standing thing that happens, though. Like people who see Elvis.
Yeah.
Like, I saw Elvis working in a diner. What?
I don't think so.
You probably didn't know.
Even just like old age.
Well, yeah.
How old would Elvis be? He was born in 1935.
Yeah. 88? No.
That means he's the same age as my granny. So, you know, like, even... he'd be an old man.
Yeah.
And, like, the prisoners who escaped from Alcatraz.
Yes.
That's another one.
Mm-hmm.
But this one doesn't seem to be true.
No.
It's pretty clear that he was executed.
Yeah. Not least because 40,000 people saw it happen.
Yes.
Well, that's the end of Deacon Brodie.
Yes. It's pretty clear that was the end. What's not clear, even now, is exactly why Brodie took part in the robberies at all.
Well, yeah. Why did he just throw it all away, go a bit barmy, and then start a crime spree that he was never going to end?
In the first episode, I mentioned that he had incurred gambling debt.
Yes.
And he had his mistresses and his children that he had to finance. But when he was arrested and when an investigation was taken into his affairs, it showed that he was £1,422 in credit when they seized him in Amsterdam.
So he was fine.
He had plenty of money.
Yeah. Like 150 years more.
That would set him up for life.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
He had that in credit.
Yeah.
There was no debt.
No.
That he wouldn't be able to pay with that.
So he was thrill seeking.
It seems like it.
Maybe it's more similar to when you hear of like middle-aged housewives who start shoplifting.
It's the thrill.
Yeah. It's just for the sheer fuckery.
I saw a theory on the Deacon Brodie website which kind of explains why this theory of he had gambling debt and he had to pay for his mistress, why that even exists if that wasn't the case and he had enough. The theory is that people of that era needed to blame Brodie's lifestyle for his crimes because otherwise it didn't make any sense.
Ah, that's interesting.
All these vices and you know, the sinful things he's doing, that's why he did it. Because otherwise it didn't make any sense if he was doing it for no reason.
Well,
they could not conceive of that.
Well, there has to be a reason. Even now, I'm like searching for a reason.
Right?
Even just that he had a mental breakdown.
Yeah, a grief?
Yeah.
Like mental break?
Don't know. Maybe he blew a funny fuse.
But it's not clear.
What do you think?
I really don't know. It startled me reading how much money he had available. Because that's what I thought. Just, well, like, he was living like an idiot. That he was living outside his means, so he needed the money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that way.
Well, especially because when that's happened with castle episodes in the past, it was Leith Hall especially. One guy just partied all the time and blew all the money.
And, like, it happens when you have all that money readily available, and especially when you inherit, I feel like.
Well, I think that's the difference, because he inherited, but he had a trade. Mm-hmm. Like, he was actually really good at what he did. Whereas in other cases, they were either military people, but then they retire, so they don't have any way to make money. They're just living off the money they have. Whereas he had plenty of ways to make money, and what would have largely been a debt-free business, because it had been built up by his father.
Well, yeah, he just continued it.
So it's not like he took a lot of debt out to, like, build the business in the first place.
It's really strange.
Bizarre.
Really strange.
Absolutely bizarre.
Apparently, Deacon Brodie was one of the inspirations for The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Mm-hmm. Partly because Stevenson inherited a cabinet from his father that had been made by Brodie.
Ooh, that's cool.
It's not verified that the cabinet was actually made by him, because it doesn't have a maker's mark on it, which would usually signify that it had been made. But a letter was found with the cabinet that suggests that it was made by Brodie.
Okay.
And Stevenson grew up knowing the story, but had this connection and fascination because his dad had this cabinet.
That's pretty cool.
He made that.
Yeah.
This beautiful, it's just a wooden cabinet. You know, he made this beautiful piece of furniture, and he was this robber.
Yeah.
So it seems to have inspired the story. And the cabinet itself, the actual cabinet, is now in the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh.
Very cool.
You can go see it.
That's very cool. Oh, it's so bizarre. Mm-hmm. He just went off his rocker.
Yeah. And if you would like more Deacon Brodie places to visit, there's the Tavern in Edinburgh, where the story began, where I first found out about it. If you're in New York or Ottawa, you can also go to a Deacon Brodie's Tavern.
Oh, yeah.
In New York, it's, quote, on the south side of the famous West Side 46th Street Restaurant Row between 8th and 9th Avenue.
The south side of the west side.
The south side of the famous West Side 46th Street Restaurant Row between 8th and 9th Avenue.
Well, there you go.
You can tell I'm very familiar with New York.
Absolutely.
In Ottawa, it's on the corner of Elgin and Cooper.
That's hilarious.
It's on Elgin.
Yeah.
There's a small town called Elgin very close to here.
Yep.
So that was weird.
And another one called Cooper that's not so close to here.
Spelt differently.
Oh, okay.
But that is the story of the infamous Deacon Brodie.
Well, so I saved half a point earlier, in case we came back to it. So I wonder, when all the newspapers were reporting on him and this, like, crazy lifestyle he had and this nefarious other life he was leading, if that then made people think, like, oh, well, that actually makes sense, because now that I think about it, I remember him doing all these weird things.
Probably.
I remember him being really weird like that, and then that kind of fed into that image that they could then blame his strange behaviour on.
I mean, it happens with a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, well, because it's quite common now, so it's funny it was common, or it happened back then. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh, now that I know, I feel like I always knew. I'm like, well, then you didn't know. But
the papers did a lot to paint him as a villain, but according to the social norms of the time.
Yeah.
That it was appalling that you would commit sin, or you would go against the virtue of productivity and, you know, the sort of Victorian, this is pre-Victorian, but traditional Victorian good.
Yep.
That he had all that and still was able to do all these things.
Yeah.
That was what made him the particular villain that he was in the papers. Uh-huh. I also forgot to tell you, remember the family Bible?
Oh, yeah.
That I referenced right at the beginning. I'm sure it still exists somewhere. It's been recovered, and it's still something you can go and see. Uh-huh. But his siblings, or his later family, crossed him out of the family Bible.
Oh, that must be tough.
Which was a big deal.
That would be a big deal. Crossed off the family tree.
Yeah, they were very ashamed of him.
Yeah. Ooh. Mm-hmm. That is quite cutting, isn't it?
It's a little thing, but to the people who matter, that would have been very significant.
Would have been a big thing to them.
Like, it had his father's tribute to his dead mother.
Oh, yeah.
But he's been crossed out. His birth has been crossed out of the family Bible.
Nope.
So yeah, they made him a villain.
That's why you don't marry your second cousin.
This is what happens.
This is what inbreeding does to you.
What do you think?
Quite the tale. Worth the wait to hear the second part.
I'm so glad. I hope you don't mind that we've split it over 2 episodes. The feedback last time we split seemed to be positive.
Yep.
You guys like a somewhat shorter episode.
Yeah, yeah.
And there will still be 10 stories this season.
Yes. We're not going to half-ass you.
We wouldn't do that.
That's not the expression. We're not going to shortchange you. That's what.
This is episode 2.5.
Yeah.
Not 3.
Not 3. Totally different.
Thank you for sticking with us if you're still here.
Yes.
We appreciate you.
Thank you very much. It's always appreciated. We are going to jump across to Patreon now.
Yes, we are going to talk about the episode over there. All our thoughts, all our feelings. Odin was dreaming earlier. Maybe he'll dream again. We don't know.
That's the voice we use.
You'll have to come see. And if you've made it this far through the episode, please let us know what you think of Kieran's new ad.
Oh, yeah. Do you like it? Do you hate it?
Let us know.
Did you laugh? Or are you just like, what the fuck is this?
Because then we'll know, if you comment on the ad, we'll know that you listened to the very, very end of the episode. It'll be like a special club.
Yeah, the cool people.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.